Welcome to the Pharos Fit podcast, where we help you to explore your capacity to move better, push further, and achieve your limitless potential through fitness, nutrition, recovery, and lifestyle. You know, I've been thinking about it lately in terms of training. It's like there are these two polarities between training in a way that makes me look good versus training in a way that makes me feel good. Now, I can train a certain way that might make me look great, and I might post a picture on Instagram and everyone will be going, oh my God, you look great. And I'll get that instant dopamine rush of like, oh, people said I look nice. But then it's a very empty quest. It's like, well, where does that end? You just keep trying to get more perfect and more perfect and more perfect, and it just ends in a mess. Versus, I'm going to train in such a way that makes me feel great. So now I can do certain things. I have more capability.
Right.
I can run if I need to. I can play with my kid if I want to. If I go to the beach, I can run. I can swim. If I want to go on holiday in Montana, which I pretty much want to do all the time now, I can go on hikes and I can do all kinds of fun stuff. So it is that, you know, I see the kind of like nutritional world and the fitness world. It's kind of one and the same. These two things of like everybody telling you should look a certain way by doing certain things versus, you know, I just want to be happy. I just want to feel happy and I want to feel good about myself. And if I eat and train in such a way that makes me achieve that, then the byproduct of that is probably looking better anyway. Hey guys, welcome back to the Pharos Fit podcast with me, your aging but still hanging on for dear life host, Peter Vodden. I am here today with my producer, Brandon. Hey, Brandon.
Hey, Pete, how you doing?
Good, brother.
Good to be back. Yeah.
How you feeling?
I'm alive.
You're alive?
Just like you.
Yeah, we're hanging in there. My delightful wife, Emily Cavell.
Hello.
Hello, Emily. And our guest extraordinaire today is Bethany Walls. Hey, Bethany.
Hello.
I'm going to tell people what you do in a second.
Great.
But I just want to say hi.
Hi.
Today's podcast is on a really interesting topic. Something that's coming more and more to the forefront of our minds when we talk about what we eat is the psychology of nutrition. You know, previously on the podcast, we've talked a lot about, you know, macros and calories and, you know, nutrient density on that kind of thing. But more and more, when you're in the game for a long time, you realize that what really matters is the psychology of nutrition and why people eat what they eat and what makes people turn to those habit foods, or why people, you know, can't maintain quote unquote healthy diets for long periods of time and so forth. So Bethany's a kind of an expert on this subject. She's going to, you know, tell us a little bit about herself and the experiences that she's had. And I think a lot of you guys out there are going to find this really interesting, really helpful, and it's going to enable you to notice some kind of maybe some similarities in what she's saying and the things you can relate to. And yeah, like I said, I think it's going to be really, really, really interesting and really useful for you guys.
Yeah, I feel like this episode came kind of on the precipice of this idea. Okay, I got a tangent really quickly, but I promise I'll bring it around. I will bring it around. So we, you know, we're in the industry of like health and wellness and constant like betterment, and people come to us because they want like awesome transformation and all of these like, you know, fun things that hopefully inspire people to like live out their best and happiest lives, right? But there's this rabbit hole. Like I feel like when you go in with that mindset, you kind of walk this line between self-betterment and things that are actually making your life like improve and happier, and things that just kind of become an obsession. You know, like that interesting line between self-improvement and the spiral of when that becomes like a problem. And
and also it's Bethany will talk about this, I'm sure. It's like the thing that you think is going to make you happy doesn't actually make you happy.
Right, or are we even building goals around happiness? Like, are we even considering happiness in our quest of goals? Like, where are our actual goals coming from? So we essentially brought Bethany in because, like, our minds are just racing with all of these questions, you know? And especially for us, I think, like, being a part of the solution and not like perpetuating the problem is something that we always want to be like self-aware of, and like asking those questions and like working on those things and having that conversation. So thank you, Bethany, for coming and joining us and helping us wrap our brains around diet culture and what's going on
all
with
the
that.
rabbit holes.
Yeah. What got you into this?
So many things. I grew up around the world of nutrition. My dad owned a nutrition company. So I was sort of like in that world from the get-go. But I think when I was a kid and a teenager, I am and was an actress. And part of that, quest in the 90s was looking a certain way. And so I started to like dip my toe in the water of dieting, every diet on the face of the planet, and that spiraled into a horrible eating disorder. And so I think in sort of like healing from this eating disorder or recovery, I got really into looking at nutrition as sort of a more holistic tool, which it's not just about what you put in your body yields a specific result. It's how do you feel about what you're eating? How do you feel when you're eating? How do you feel about the food choices you're making? And then I sort of went the psychology route. I have my degree in psychology, and then started working with kids and teenagers that were primarily struggling with eating disorders in an inpatient facility. So all of that is just to sort of say that, yes, I have several experiences.
Well, what's interesting is that I love that you came from the route of psychology first. Like you didn't, know that this was going to be a part of your life because it's just what you have lived. Your dad owns a nutrition company, so
Right.
that's just going to be your life. So, okay, I'm, doing nutrition and leaning into that. It kind of brought you to a place where you're like, wait, I need to look at this from a different approach.
Yeah.
So you kind of took a step away, went and studied psychology, and then it seems like it kind of led you into this path of being like, how do I help the future not turn into what happened to me?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also like, again, being in the acting industry, I was looking around like, okay, here are all these people who have the money and the resources to be getting the best training, the best nutritional coaching, the best everything. Why is this still, I was also a waitress, and I would be like waiting on actresses who were like eating vegetables with no olive oil,
Right.
things that are like, and to me it was so frustrating and mind-boggling. Like, how is it that we have all of these resources, we have all of this information at our fingertips, both in the psychology world and in the nutrition world, and we're not quite fusing them together?
Right. It's funny because it's also in the training world. It's the reason people don't get the results they're looking for, quite often it's not because they don't know what they should be doing.
Right.
It's just that they can't
Right.
make themselves do it.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same exact thing. And it's like, we have all of this access to, especially with the internet now, we have all of the access to like, here's exactly what to eat to look
Right.
like this or whatever.
Right.
And it's just that. It's like we're not hitting all the things because we're not overcoming our own psychology, or we're not analyzing our own psychology and like our relationship with food, our relationship with ourselves. Really.
Yeah, and we wanted to kind of bring this point up a little bit later, but what you're talking about, the internet and internet advice and that kind of thing, one of the problems is there is just too much advice. There is so much like quote unquote advice on there, good and bad, that people can't, find the right path for them, because it's impossible if you don't understand yourself and you go into it like, I'm going to look at this person, what this person eats, and I'm going to look at this person, what this person eats.
Right.
Not really accounting for their own situation or their own experience or that kind of thing. They're just taking bits from all these different
Right.
people, jumbling it all together, and just ending up in a huge confused mess.
Yeah, you want to talk about rabbit hole. Like, there's a diet there are hundreds of thousands of diets, and like now we have Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, and there's a page for literally every single one of these diets. I mean, you could spend like hours and hours and hours looking at all of these different philosophies or diets or whatever, and still not come up with what the right answer is for you.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Which part? Why do I think that there are so many diets?
No, well,
The answer to that
I
one
guess,
is,
like, why the hell are there so many diets in this world?
the answer to that question is money.
Yes,
It's
100%.
so true. I guess that's actually a better thing, is like the business around
Yeah.
that like around nutrition is what makes like, oh well, is what perpetuates the division of like, eat this, not that, my way is the way,
Right.
this is, do my approach because this is like the proven effective method to blah blah blah.
Yeah, it's marketing.
Right, it's just marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the diet industry is like a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it stays that way because, I mean,
'Cause there's
we'll
always
get
a new
into this
diet.
too,
Right.
right? But there's always new diet, and diets don't work.
Right.
And it sucks because like I feel like every diet is still like, it can't help but perpetuate that, like, as if everyone's goal should be to be as thin as possible.
Right.
Like you like do this because
That's right.
it will help to do, to make you as lean as humanly possible.
Right.
And so it just kind of it's almost like the quest comes from a place of like, it's never going to be enough. So then people are
Right.
like, you may not, like, you try this diet, and because you think that because we're perpetuated by this idea of like, I need to be as thin as possible or be my leanest self, then because you're quote unquote not as lean as possible, then you're like, oh, that diet didn't work. So then you just go to the next one and the next one because you're chasing this thing that is like never going to happen. But companies and the industry knows that, so they're just going to keep capitalizing on that quest.
Right. Well, and the other thing which is important to point out is that diets aren't sustainable. And especially if you are embarking on the quest of, I'm going to go on this diet because I need to lose 20 pounds in 30 days. Like, that's not sustainable. It's not, there's no other way to say it. You can't sustain that type of living, both nutritionally, mentally, time-wise, commitment-wise. It's just not healthy, and it's not feasible. And I think what happens is people, will start a diet, like a very restrictive diet. Let's use that, like, lose 20 pounds in 30 days. Also, if you're listening to this and are thinking that, like, please run in the other direction. But, like, okay, so maybe you're super strict for 5 days. You lose a couple pounds. You're like, this is awesome. Day 6, you feel like shit. Day 7, you are going out to like happy hour with your girlfriends or whatever, and like real life gets in the way, and then you totally go off the wagon because you've been restricting yourself for 7 days and you're hungry, and then
you feel bad about yourself afterwards.
Terrible
You're
about
like, I've been
yourself
working so
because-
hard, and now I've like come over the edge, and now I feel like I'm spiraling. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's built in. I mean, that's built into these diets, is like feeling like a failure so that you'll continue to buy the next diet or continue to buy, whatever they're selling you is the next step or the bigger commitment. It's a really vicious cycle.
And the add-on supplements you need to
Yeah.
stick with this
Yeah.
diet. In order
Yeah.
to do it, you're going to need this, and this.
Because you'll be feeling like shit
So-
because you're not eating enough.
I would say, like, with everything we've just said, one might wonder, why would you be in this industry? Like, why, like,
Yeah.
like, what is it that makes you excited? Like, other than your own past, like, what is your approach or perspective or like hope in having this be a part of, having this be what you do?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I can sort of reconcile that because I'm not in the industry of dieting. I'm in the industry of nutrition. And that's a big difference.
For sure.
And
That's an important distinction. I feel like we should pause. That's like, and like feel that,
Yeah. Give that a moment.
Because I think those two, it's like, oh, I want to go on a diet. You need a nutritionist, and they go hand in hand. So
Right.
what would you say? Like, you're not in the industry of dieting. What is the industry of nutrition?
So I think that's different for every nutritionist. For me, it's I mean, my sort of philosophy and what I try to do with my clients is coming at it from a place of like nourishment, coming at it from a place of what does health actually look like? P.S. It usually doesn't look like being as skinny as you possibly can or being as lean as you possibly can. Yeah, so it's more about, again, like going back to the psychology of it, right? Which is like, for me, it's not just about the food and like teaching people how to eat certain food groups or not to eat certain food groups, or like, here's vitamins and minerals. It's also about, what is your relationship like with your body? What is your relationship to the food that you're eating? How do you feel when you're eating the food that you're eating? How does your body feel, which is a different thing than how you're feeling emotionally. You know, right. It's more of a holistic approach that sort of encompasses more than just the food and more than just the physical results of that food.
Right. So when somebody comes to you and is like, I want to work with you because I want to look like you, or I want to lose, do you get that? I want to lose 10 pounds, so I'm going to go work with Bethany because she's awesome, and I heard about this thing called intuitive eating, and that sounds fucking great. Let's go do that. What do you say to those clients?
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, but that is the thing, right? Like, you come and you're like, okay, what do you want? I want to lose 10 pounds. I would love to look like you. Like, whatever you got going on, I would love to get on that train. All right, I'm ready for the plan.
Yeah. So first of all, if somebody comes to me and they say, I want to lose 10 pounds, it's like, okay, why? Yeah. Do you want to lose 10 pounds because you think that'll make you feel better about yourself? Because you think that'll make do you think that'll make you happy? Do you think that you'll feel better in your body? Like, what's deeper than I want to lose 10 pounds, and can we make that the goal?
Right. It's just differentiating between what do you want to look like versus what do you want to feel like.
Exactly.
Like, tell me how you want to feel as opposed to tell me what you want to look like.
Or what kind of life do you want? Like, for, like, I want to feel good in my own skin every day.
Right, because, and let me just say this, like, that has nothing to do with what you weigh. And I have clients, or I know people who they'll lose the 10 pounds and they get to that whatever quote unquote goal weight and they're still unhappy.
Right. I've been thinking about it lately in terms of training. It's like there are these two polarities between training in a way that makes me look good versus training in a way that makes me feel good. Now, I can train a certain way that might make me look great, and I might post a picture on Instagram and everyone will be going, oh my God, you look great, and I'll get that instant dopamine rush of like, oh, people said I look nice. But then it's a very empty quest. It's like, well, where does that end? You just keep trying to get more perfect and more perfect and more perfect, and it just ends in a mess. Versus, I'm going to train in such a way that makes me feel great. So now I can do certain things. I have more capability.
Right.
I can run if I need to. I can play with my kid if I want to. If I go to the beach, I can run. I can swim. If I want to go on holiday in Montana, which I pretty much want to do all the time now, I can go on hikes and I can do all kinds of fun stuff. So it is that, I see the kind of like the nutritional world and the fitness world. It's kind of one and the same of these two things of like everybody telling you should look a certain way by doing certain things versus, I just want to be happy. I just want to feel happy and I want to feel good about myself. And if I eat and train in such a way that makes me achieve that, then the byproduct of that is probably looking better anyway.
Yeah, and it's a different outcome in terms of sustainability, in terms of how long you can maintain that quote unquote like healthy lifestyle, because you're not coming at it from this perfectionistic sort of very linear way. It's a more holistic and therefore, in my opinion, a healthier way of doing it.
And I'd say one of the biggest changes in me from my like 20s to my 30s and 40s is not asking the question how many calories are in this product, asking myself the question how much nutritional value is in this product.
Right.
Because you can buy a ton of shit that's like low cal.
Right.
It's also low anything.
Right.
Like,
or
it does
like
not have
low,
anything
or
of value.
just diet foods in general
Yeah.
that are like, oh, gluten-free, blah, 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 blah. It's like free of anything.
Yeah, there is nothing in this product that does my body any good.
Right.
Whereas if I eat like grass-fed steak, I'm a big meat eater, guys, sorry, I'm not into that. But if I eat a grass-fed steak that's full of nutritional density, I know it has a caloric value that's maybe fairly high, but I know there's a ton of like bioavailable nutrition in there that my body will be able to use very easily.
And to that point, like if you know, it's kind of like the low calorie ice cream, then you end up eating like 10 of them.
Right.
You know, it's like that, where it's like instead of this, like there are good foods and bad foods. If you don't demonize a food and then like it's okay to just eat the actual ice cream as it is, as opposed to the gluten-free, sugar-free, blah, 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 da, 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 da. You know, so there's no guilt around this food that then tends to cause, you know, behavioral things like binging or just like guilt around eating this thing. Like what's so funny to hear Pete talk about is like, we experience the same thing as females, and I think we forget that dudes feel this way too. Like, as a female, for me, actually, in particular, just speaking on my own experience, the times that I have been complimented the most, I have been the least healthy. Like the times that I was my quote unquote skinniest, like I remember this time in college and I had lost all this weight and I was also like smoking a pack of cigarettes a day and like, you know.
Is this your smoking and Adderall diet?
This was my smoking Adderall and tortillas with peanut butter.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And not eating, you know, but like it's horrible because then you post a photo and then everyone's like, oh my God, you look great. Or, you know, there are times that I'm like not caring about my sleep or my nutrition or my, just like my happiness in general. And people will say, wow, Emily, you look great. And it's so hard because you're like, oh, please don't perpetuate my bad behaviors. Like I know that this isn't something that I should be doing, but you complimenting me makes me like want to keep doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you. Like when I was the sickest in my eating disorder, I was getting the most compliments and you know, job offers from modeling, you know, blah blah blah. But it's like people are complimenting you, or in my case me, like while I'm dying essentially.
Right.
And also, like, I think if I can just say, I think to fix that, or part of the solution as gym owners, as people within this, you know, Pharos community, is to take the focus away from how people look or that sort of result oriented complimenting and just the emphasis on like what the result is, and put the emphasis on, again, like, well, how are people feeling?
Yeah. We did a Pharos takeover recently, and Noah did one day, and he said something very good, which I kind of like.
He's the best.
Yeah, it's something that has always been like part of my, you know, philosophy, but it kind of brought it back home. Was like, don't ask yourself what you look like, ask yourself what you're capable of. So it brings that question back to, okay, let's bring it all back to capability, and what can you really like do with your fitness? Can you perform certain tasks and make the completion of those tasks the thing, and not the aesthetic of the thing Right. And like I said, like usually, if you can do the stuff, you'll look better anyway. But the looking better isn't the focus. The doing the stuff is the focus, and the way you look is the consequence of the focus.
Right.
But it's just a different mindset. You know?
Right. And I would say for nutrition, it's for me anyway, in my sort of philosophy, it's less about like, you know, ticking the boxes and more about, well, how do you feel? I know I keep saying that, but it really is, it's so important because
I mean, this is food therapy. Like you're literally approaching it from like, and if somebody comes and asks you for a thing, what macros should they be eating? Like you're not going to give them macro. Like,
well, it's not, and it's not this, you know, like no two people are the same. You know, like there are some people who feel great on a vegan diet, eating a really high carb, you know, nutritional profile. There are other people who feel like shit on that diet.
That's how I know that like diets really are bullshit. Because Pete, for instance, it dominates and feels really well, and it's easy to sustain on like a more carnivore type diet. And then like people are like, oh, that's horrible, and you should, you know, and then like the carnivores are against the vegans and the ketos and the like. There's so many, and that's how you know that it's bullshit, because everybody, like, different things work for different people. So why can, like, how can we say that there's an absolute?
This is the problem with everything. We are in such a polarizing culture of you have to be in this camp,
right?
Or you have to be in this camp,
right?
And there's no like in between of like, well, some of this makes sense and some of this makes sense, and for different people, different things make sense. So
right.
It's okay to not be in camps all the time.
Right.
Like, just be. I always call it like the lack of common sense in modern society. There is no common sense anymore. You have to either be all for this or all for that, and you can't be in the middle with.
And never the two shall meet.
Right. Like, for instance, a lot of people in the intuitive eating space are like very like anti-macros, anti-diet, anti-things like that. But we've had conversations where it's like you have kind of made it sound like there are tools in the box, and it is but one tool, kind of.
Exactly. And again, it all comes back to like who I'm sitting across as a client, or in these days sitting on Zoom with. If you're someone who has struggled with eating disorders, or you have obsessive compulsive tendencies, or you kind of have those rabbit hole-y tendencies, I'm not going to give you a list of boxes to check off, because you're going to get obsessive about it. And so in that case, I might like sort of encourage you to go the intuitive eating route, and I encourage kind of everybody to just at least
everyone ends
explore
up
that.
in that path,
right?
You start there, or
right?
There.
Right.
It sounds like, I mean, right? The goal is intuitive eating is the goal, right? Like I'm pretty sure everyone and their mother would love to say, "Oh, I don't diet. I just intuitively eat what is best for my body."
Yes.
And it's not something that I stress about. Like, isn't that the goal for everyone?
I would think so. I would think so. Yeah.
But at the same time, because we were talking about this, like, experimentation is fun, right? Like, there, it's not like, oh, I'm either anti-diet or I'm obsessive about dieting. Like, can you speak to what are the role that diets play in your practice, I guess would be the question. So again, are you anti-diet?
Kind of, yeah. I'm not anti-experimentation, meaning like if you're curious about how you'll feel on a vegan diet, and you're coming at that from the place of curiosity and like wanting to feel better, or wanting to do it for, whatever the reasons are, environmental reasons, whatever, try it and see what happens. But don't be married to it either way. Treat it like you would do a science experiment. So like, what am I feeling? How is my body performing? Am I starting to get obsessive about this? So I'm not anti-diet in those terms. Where I get anti-diet is like, I don't want a client calling me and being like, which this has happened, being like, I'm on the carnivore diet, I'm only eating meat from now on, because I'm afraid of carbohydrates, I'm afraid of vegetables, I'm afraid of fruit. So or keto. I mean, fucking don't get me started on keto. Like, there's so much fear around these diets, and that's where I'm anti-diet, is because a lot of these diets are perpetuating and kind of promoting fear-based eating.
Well, this is also the problem. It's like people cannot be honest with themselves about how they feel when they eat certain things, because they want to adhere to a dogma. So they're like, I want to believe in this, so I'm going to tell myself that I feel better when I eat this way, even if they don't. But because they want to adhere to the dogma, they'll push it.
That was a lot in paleo. Like, I feel like when you first started the CrossFit lifestyle, everyone's like, paleo.
Right.
We're all like pretending. We're all going to like parties and bringing paleo dishes and stuff. And it's like, at the end of the day, no one talks about paleo anymore, because they all hated themselves on it. And,
I think it's that, but I think it's also something deeper, which is that I think we live in a society that perpetuates and sort of glorifies being disconnected with your body to an extent. So like, people actually don't know how they feel oftentimes.
Right.
People actually don't know how to check in with their body and be like, do I feel good? I don't know. We've become so disconnected to how we feel physically, even, that some people truly don't know that they feel like shit.
Right. That's
Which
true.
I love that you keep circling back to this, because you're like, no, guys, it really
is.
Feelings.
Yeah,
like,
it really
if
is.
You can develop a connection.
I'm also a Pisces, so I'm all about the feelings.
Let's take it back a little bit. So when you first started working in this kind of area. Were there like common threads you could see in people that were leading to these
Eating
problems with
disorders?
nutrition? Eating disorders, or problems with food, and was it like certain events in their lives, or was it just like patterns of behavior over long periods of time that led to?
So
I guess I'm talking about
eating
triggers.
disorders,
What kind of
yeah.
triggers the-
So eating disorders are very different than, like your run-of-the-mill food issues.
Right.
In what way? Like, give me an example of like a behavior difference. Like, what would be like, oh, I just have everyday issues, and then like, how do I know that it's actually like, oh,
Yeah.
wait, is this something everyone deals with, or like, how do you know that it's actually an issue?
Yeah, I would say like how much. I mean, I should really just pull up like the National Eating Disorder Awareness goalposts for this stuff, but I would say it's, are you obsessing? First of all, are you obsessing should just be the question everybody asks themselves about anything. As soon as you're starting to get into that obsessive territory, it's like danger zone.
Yeah, you're an addict.
And how do you
whatever
know?
it is, you're an addict,
What are some like?
So are you
I could
spending?
say I'm not obsessing. Like, what are some like behaviors that or triggers? I think is what Pete's talking about. Is it like events?
Yeah.
Or like patterns or things to just be mindful of?
Is it like a trauma? Do you find like it's a trauma that happens to them at some point in their lives, or is it like something that gradually creeps up? So
Either.
I guess,
Yeah, it really depends on the person. I mean, I would say all of us experience trauma in one way or another. Eating disorders specifically are a way in which people cope with that trauma. It's a coping mechanism.
Right.
And contrary to what everybody seems to believe, it's rarely about how you look. Meaning people don't develop a full-blown eating disorder because they want to look a certain way. That might be how it presents, but it's more about establishing a sense of control when someone doesn't feel like they have control in their lives otherwise, which P.S. none of us do. But I think going back to your question, like, is it a trauma or is it something that is a little more insidious and creeps in slowly? It really depends. And I think signs to look out for should you have that sort of like creeping sense of, ooh, is this danger zone territory? How much time are you spending thinking about food? How much time are you spending thinking about exercise? Are you planning days in advance for what you're going to eat? Are you skipping social events? Not that we have social events right now in quarantine, but
you're like my normal.
Yeah.
Once upon a time.
Yeah. R.I.P. But are you altering your life and are you altering your social life to fit this sort of quote unquote diet or healthy eating? I think that's like, to me, when I see that start to happen with people, that's a big, big red flag.
Yeah.
Are you sacrificing parts of your life that would otherwise make you happy to stay on this?
Do you find with that though, there's another side of it that's happening right now? It's like, with the obesity crisis and so many people like with bad health and the problems with weight and that kind of thing, and diabetes is off the chart and all this kind of thing. There's the other side of it of like, well, I'm eating this because it makes me happy, and ultimately it's making them sick. So it's like, how do you say to someone, if it's making you happy, you should eat it, while saying, but the things you're eating that's making you happy is actually making you sick. So there's a difficult kind of relationship with those two things, because on the one side it's like, don't restrict yourself because it's going to cause problems with obsessive eating, but if you don't have some control over what you eat, you're going to end up on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think it's sort of either end of the pendulum swing, right? So like, ideally everybody would be balanced in that nice, happy, like middle ground where everybody's mostly eating healthfully, mindfully, without fear or too many emotions involved, and also enjoying food and like eating a piece of pizza eating the cupcake and eating, whatever it is, I think we start to get a little out of whack on either end when, let me say this. I think a lot of the focus on like obesity and also a lot of the focus on diet culture are intrinsically linked. I think we have such a problem, and this is just my opinion. I'm not basing this on a study or anything. This is just me talking out of my ass. I think that the reason we have such an insane problem on both ends of the spectrum, both eating disorders and obesity and, all this kind of stuff in this country is because we focus so much on this like thin ideal, and there's also so much stigma and fat phobia in this culture, and I think that backfires, and that's where like we have this obesity quote unquote epidemic or whatever.
Well, because it makes it sound like there's fat people and there's thin people, and thin people are afraid of fat people, and fat people are either happy being fat or they are on the search to being thin. But one, this is a topic that you said to me, just a theme that you said to me that I think is like, I've just been thinking about this so much every day since we have spoken about this, is this idea of like, how can we promote that you can be healthy at every and any size?
Yeah.
Which then, because because it's like, it's perpetuated because if you, I've been very much overweight, and the stress of being overweight perpetuates the choices that I make. So it kind of sounds like, from Bethany's perspective, if you approach it from a place of mindset, what's the goal, what is my thing, then I can be happy with the place that I'm at, not have the guilt and the obsession that causes then the behaviors that perpetuate the unhappiness and unhealthiness without while still being okay at the size that I am, whether I, because I've been between 110 pounds and I was not healthy and was like my worst self, to 160 pounds, and I don't think that I was happy then either. And it's like, how can I find happiness at each of those places, regardless of where you are? So it's not you're either this person or you're this person. You can find health in any, wherever you are in that, wherever you are on that journey, Yeah.
There's a couple of things, a couple of problems that I see, and I think it's probably worse in America than I think it is anywhere else, but I think it exists worldwide. One is irresponsible marketing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll go deeper into that in a second. And the other, which is on the other side of it, is blame culture and a lack of accountability. So on one side, and I read this article today, I think it was an article or a post, it was that Subway sandwiches in Ireland, Subway can no longer say that they serve bread. They can no longer say that their sandwiches are made of bread, because technically it's not bread. It's a bunch of chemicals
and sugar.
There's a bunch of chemicals and sugar that blows up disguised as bread. So they're no longer in the island can they say there's bread in their sandwiches, because it's not fucking bread. Yeah. So you have this huge thing of, marketing and this is healthy for you, this is healthy for you. We've seen it a million times of The Biggest Loser for years, told everybody to eat Subway sandwiches, even though they knew it was a bunch of chemical bullshit. And this is,
Well, they had a pedophile too, who was their marketing
face,
yeah, and Subway might be the worst company ever.
Yeah,
no values, no morals.
But anyway, so with all these different health products, there's been eat this, it's healthy for you. Eat this, it's healthy for you. Low fat. For years, it's been going on, and they knew it wasn't good for people, but it's happened. So on that side of it, I think that's of course led to a massive problem with a lack of health, a lack of immune system health, and an increase in obesity. But then on the other side of it, people have become less and less accountable for the things they do to their own body and their own actions. So it's kind of well, it's not my fault. They told me it was healthy. It's not my fault. I didn't know it wasn't good for me. So there's that weird thing going on of people for some reason these days don't want to make themselves aware, because they'd rather have someone else to blame for their problems.
But I think you're also, if I may just say, I think you're also coming from the perspective of somebody who, this is your life. Like, your life
Right.
is nutrition and training and the pursuit of the truth of what the best nutrition and training is. Other people don't have access to that information.
Of course.
And this is where I start to get like pissed off at the marketing thing, right? Is like, people who don't have the access to this information, or who can't afford to hire a nutritionist, or who can't, don't know to log on and read all these studies, or don't have the time or whatever, are going to Subway thinking this is the healthiest alternative. It's something I can afford.
Right.
Which is also,
Which is also a problem.
I grew up on
Yeah.
Taco Bell. This is the exact same
Yeah.
thing. Where
McDonald's
it's like,
feeds 1% of the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. Which, like, it's frustrating to me because I think we can sit here from our very privileged, and this is our lifestyle, right? Saying like, how do people not know this? How are people letting themselves become unaware of this? And it's, people don't have access, and they are doing the best that they can. Could people hold themselves more accountable? I don't know. I would have to talk to that person and see what their knowledge is and see, what their access is to this knowledge. But I think it's also important to recognize that not everybody has
Access to the right information.
and the privilege to be as aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Accessibility is everything. Like, do I have the ability to do this? Like you
Right.
said, Subway has a tens of hundreds of $1 million marketing campaign going. So the first thing they're going to see when they open something up is Subway's
Yeah,
good.
I mean, come on.
Subway's
The
this.
Olympics is sponsored by McDonald's, people. Like,
Yeah.
this is what we're working with.
It's so
you know?
ironic. Yeah. Yeah. And, like, I think this is also, I mean, not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but like, one of the big frustrations in the sort of quote unquote wellness community is just this question of access. Like, there are people touting $32 smoothies, like, this is, you have to drink this smoothie to be healthy, which God bless them. And do I love an Erewhon smoothie? Absolutely. Does it also leak my bank account? It's like,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But
Right, and
That's
is it
not the-
health or is it just the marketing of health?
and
the
it could, and
representation?
it
That's the problem.
very well could be healthy. It very well could be like, the creme de la creme of
Elixir
health.
of life.
Right. But you also have to recognize that, like, not everybody can afford that smoothie.
Yeah.
And if that's the only way you're relaying this information to people, is like, you have to buy this, you have
Or
to buy
you
this
have to
protein
have
powder.
grass-fed beef, like
Right.
families don't have, like they don't even know what that means.
You're looking
Right.
at double
you
the
know?
price when you go to the store. You see the grass-fed section, and you
Right,
see the
yeah,
regular
yeah.
ones. Like, someone's like,
Right.
I can't afford that.
Right.
Done with that one?
Sure.
Let's move on.
Okay.
So you've treated both men and women in this.
Yes.
Do you see any like major psychological differences between men and women, like
When it comes to food.
when it comes to the relationships with food?
Yeah. Yes, I would say it's more dependent on how people are socialized.
Right.
I think that women, by and large, are socialized and sort of made to feel like they need to be thin, at least in this culture. We've talked about like the thin ideal, but men too have a huge pressure on them to be.
Jacked and tan.
Yeah, sure. So like, yeah, I also treated, when I worked with eating disorder clients, we had a lot of young boys who would come in
Right.
with some pretty severe eating disorders too. So it doesn't affect just
And
women.
what were those eating disorders? Is it still like anorexia, bulimia, that kind of thing, or is it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or like orthorexia, which is kind of what I think we were touching on before with like the rabbit hole stuff. Orthorexia is neither anorexia or bulimia, but it's this like extreme fixation on quote unquote health.
Right.
Wanting to be like super fit or super healthy to the point where it's becoming unhealthy.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it was kind of all over the spectrum.
Yeah, that's interesting because it is that thing like and even I find myself in that position sometimes where you're like, when you get in that mindset, you're sitting in a restaurant and you're looking at the menu and you're like, oh my God, I can't eat anything. Oh my God, I can't eat anything. Everything's bad for me. Everything's bad for me. Like you
Been
can
there,
screw
yeah.
yourself if you get too far into that and just relax. This is going to be fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's going to be all right.
Yeah, but I think like that's so important to talk about too, because we live in LA. You know, like that is so normalized to like go out to dinner and be like, oh, I can't eat this. I'm blah, 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 you know, whatever. But that's not
It's a problem.
healthy. It's a problem.
Right.
It's a
Right.
problem. If you can't go out to dinner with your best friends or your significant other without like freaking out about what you're eating, I think
Right.
we're tiptoeing into some
dark territory.
yeah.
Right, which is interesting because I feel like a lot of people are afraid to say, I have an eating disorder, or like I recognize that this is a problem, so I'm gonna like seek out help. It sounds like what you're saying is like, I mean, we all kind of teeter that line, right? Like whether it's because of our social media and we're like liking, you know, whether it's because of our environment where we live or our environment of what we grew up in.
Your
You know,
industry.
your industry, like, you know, we got in this industry to help people and to like, you know, better people's lives. And you look and you're like, oh wait, but there's a rabbit hole
Yeah.
of that, of like the people that get lost in that pursuit, you know,
Yeah.
and how it's actually easier. It could happen to anyone, and you know.
So in the time that you started this kind of this kind of part of your life to now, have you noticed things get worse because of social media and that kind of thing, or is it?
It's funny, not to age myself in the backwards way, but like I was so young when social media became a thing that I don't think I was really aware of how it was affecting everybody around me, including myself. What I know is that there have been so many, and thankfully they're starting to do more studies, so many studies on how it affects us, like body
Right.
image wise, and specifically teenagers.
Right.
And it's horrifying.
Yeah, you saw that documentary. What was it?
Yeah, The Social Dilemma.
Yeah, the social dilemma.
Yeah.
And how much it's affecting
Yeah.
teenagers and
But yeah, I think like body image specifically. In fact, there was an Australian study done recently. Let me see if I can pull this up. There was an Australian study done. I mean, basically, in summary, like it wasn't causational, it was correlational. Whereas like the time spent on social media correlated to a lower body image, like lower feelings or more negative body
Feelings
image.
about your own body?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can see it makes perfect sense. People like from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed, they are scrolling through people that they want to look like but don't.
Right. I
And
mean,
it's
not
kinda
even
like-
the people who post those photos look like
that.
those photos, you know?
Exactly.
They're edited and photoshopped and filtered and yeah, it's, you know, holding this sort of like unrealistic ideal.
Right.
And how can
Right.
you not compare yourself to
God, we should just fucking stop social media.
I know.
Can we all just give up?
There's an
Yes.
NYU
Let's keep
professor,
it up.
Jonathan Haidt, and says the same thing, putting like age caps or like when you can get on social
Yeah.
media.
Right.
Like, not
Yeah,
till
you
you're
can
18
drive
or
at
20,
16.
21.
You can't get, yeah.
It's just so toxic, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Okay, so I keep coming back to this, but I think it's important because there are a lot of people in this industry, right? Like there are people like health professionals. What would you say, like being in this industry, what steps can professionals take to be a part of the solution and not just perpetuate the problem?
I would say awareness is the biggest thing that comes to mind immediately. Like, be aware of the messaging that you're putting out. You know what the eating disorder signs and symptoms are. Know what like orthorexia looks like. You know, kind of just like be aware of that. Be aware of what goals you are putting on a pedestal. Like maybe don't make the messaging that weight loss is the goal or looking a certain way is the goal or like having abs or, you know, whatever. Like make it more about how you feel or goals that are not physically oriented. No, that's not
Right,
what I
like
want
it's
to say.
more of like a reflection of your values and like the kind of life
Or like-
you want or the capabilities that you
Capabilities.
I have a great example of this, and it came from my client Frankie the other day, and she said she was swimming, I think it was last Sunday, and a big riptide came in, and one wave bowled her over, another wave bowled her over, and she couldn't swim in. She was being sucked out by the tide. Another wave kept hitting her, and she said she literally did not have the strength to get back to shore. It was a whole thing. The lifeguard came out, had to rescue her. Yeah, it was a big deal. She thought she was gonna perish. And she came in on the Monday, and it was an indication to me that I need to get stronger. Not that I need to lose weight, not that I need to look better, but in order to survive in this world, I need to get stronger.
Yeah.
And when you're a parent and you want to tell your kid things, it's like, in order to get through this life and be as healthy and as vibrant as you can and do all the things you're going to want to do, you're going to have to develop some strength. And I don't mean just physical strength, but physical strength, mental strength,
tenacity,
cardiovascular strength, tenacity, all of it.
And the strength to be aware and stand up to / not drop into the rabbit hole. Like that is, that's all strength. And I love that Pete says that, because everything is a function of strength for him. Strength is primary, and strong. It's that can manifest itself in a strength training program, but really it's he wants to perpetuate that, building more resilient humans that are strong, capable, happy in their own skin, and can pay that pay that forward.
Resilience is a word I always go back to, and I repeat it over and over again, because it's just such a thing. People need to be resilient. Life is just it keeps throwing shit at you. It really does. And if you're not resilient, it just buries you.
Yeah, welcome to 2020.
Yeah, exactly. So it's I've said it before, and I'll say it a billion times. You develop that resilience in the gym, or you can develop that resilience in the gym through training. It's something you train yourself to be. I think some of us by nature are more resilient than others, but I firmly believe it's something that is trainable, and it's a process, and it's something you can teach. The worse the situation you put yourself in and survive, the more resilient you become.
But it's true.
Because if you can get through it, then
it's unfortunate, but the
best lessons you learn are the lessons learned the hard way. It's we have a 1-year-old now who just bonked his head, and you look at it and you're so sad, and then you remember that that pain built the neural plasticity in his own brain to not make that mistake again. He can walk upstairs now because he fell down a stair. Not really, but because he learns to fall, he then learns to walk. And that is just such a metaphor for life.
and presumably with everything that we're talking about, Bethany, this isn't something that's just fixable. This is something that you just need to manage throughout your life, like with any addiction, right?
Yeah.
With alcoholic, you're never truly fixed.
Right.
You just have to manage it.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life. So
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of talk about that within the eating disorder treatment community, which is recovery is not a finite term. Meaning you don't wake up one day and you're I'm recovered. Yeah. Great. Do I feel 1,000,000% different than I did when I was in my eating disorder? Yes. I view the world differently. I view food differently. I view my body differently. However, like an alcoholic, I know that there are certain things that I'm ooh, I can't tiptoe down that path too long, or this is going to get a little murky,
Right.
So 100%. I think it's just something you have to, again, it comes back to awareness and connection and therapy.
Yeah.
I love therapy.
Go
on. Well, I was going to say it sounds really, the goal of today really is just to have a conversation about changing the culture, right? That we acknowledge that the culture is a certain way that perpetuates certain ideals, and that we want to be a part of changing that conversation and changing that culture, and that it's not something that we're just boom, done, this is the way, that in itself, figuring out what that culture shift is and how what that looks like is also a part of the process. So with that being said, what would you say, because I'm big on this, action, what are some like actionable strategies that you could give someone right now who's listening to this and saying like, oh, wow, what an interesting way, like intuitive eating. I would love to find peace and freedom with food. What do I do other than calling you immediately and booking a discovery call and having that conversation? Like, what is something that they could do today to have a more positive relationship with food?
That's a great question. I think for starters, something that's totally free and like easy, and you could do it literally as you're listening to this podcast, is checking in with how you're feeling in your body, checking in with like maybe when you go home and eat dinner tonight, or if you're, about to eat lunch or whatever, like checking in and feeling, how does this feel? How am I feeling now that I've eaten this food? Does that kale actually feel like crap now that I've eaten it? Like, I fucking hate kale.
It just made me snort.
But that's
But
a
it's
good
true,
point.
because some people think kale's healthy, and for some it's
a good
like...
point. People will tell you kale's good for you, eat it. And you're like, well, why do I feel like shit when I eat kale? Doesn't matter, just fucking eat it.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, is like part of intuitive eating is also recognizing like some of these healthy, like, God bless, I don't know if I can say the name, but there are certain quote unquote healthy restaurants in LA where every time I eat there and I recognize like, this is the most beautiful, biodynamic, healthy food or whatever. And then I eat it and I'm like, I'm going to die. Yeah. But it's, that's less about intuitive eating and more about just like checking in with how things feel. But I would say, there are tons of free resources online too. Like if you go to the intuitive eating website, everybody please look at the National Eating Disorder Awareness website, just like looking at that kind of stuff, taking their little, screener and seeing if any of that resonates. Or if you're a coach or a nutritionist or in the wellness industry in any way, checking that out to kind of be aware, I think is really great. But you're saying in terms of like if somebody's saying
I think that's a good start, right? Like, so one actionable thing is like the very next time that you eat, like your very next meal, 5 minutes later, how do you feel?
Right.
So instead of like just running to MyFitnessPal and logging the macros of what the food is, what it like think more about journaling what it is doing to your body instead of the value.
And I'm kind of going to get obsessed with this now because I've got my new Whoop, which is probably going to lead to problems. But it's not just about how you feel 20 minutes after. It's about, because 20 minutes after, like 10 minutes after eating ice cream, you're going to feel pretty fucking good.
Sure.
Now, 2 hours later, you're probably going to feel like shit.
That's right.
Right.
So like continuing to check in with yourself.
Yeah.
And also
or
like,
depending on how much you eat, okay, I had a bowl of ice cream and it was great. And then that one time that I felt horrible and downed in, and it went neck deep in it, then I felt horrible. And now I know, okay, it's not evil. It's a it's a balance of figuring out what that is. So check in with yourself 20 minutes as you're eating, 20 minutes after you eat, and then a few hours.
Sure. And then the next day.
And then the next day, ask yourself, how did yesterday's meals as a whole?
I mean, I feel like a lot of it are energy levels the next day. Like, everything I put into my body yesterday, how do I feel today?
And also recognizing that it's okay to once in a while have that bowl of ice cream or whatever, even if you don't feel like,
or some people eat ice cream every night. Like there's the if it fits your macros people, right? Like there's a whole industry around.
But that again, I would say, how do you feel and what is the motivation behind eating? And this is also what I was going to say, like check in with yourself, like, why am I eating this thing? Am I eating this thing because I feel like it's the healthiest and do it. Yeah. Kale. It's going to make me, this diet, this disgusting.
The demon known as kale.
I know.
We are not going to get sponsored by any kale companies on this.
No.
Damn. But are you reaching for whatever it is you're reaching for because you feel like, oh, this fits into my macros, or like this is going to help me lose weight, or this is like a quote unquote safe food, or are you reaching for it because it's coming from a place of wanting to nourish your body and wanting to like enjoy your food? And that's another thing that we didn't touch on. That
nourish your body and enjoy your food. I love that.
But like food is also for pleasure.
Right, and that's okay.
And that's necessary.
For some people, it's not. Like some people, like you can interview some people who are just like food is fuel. I only eat as I need. You know, and that's
I would
just
challenge
like
that.
a different.
Yeah,
Oh, you
that's
think
not
so?
true. I don't
You
yeah,
think so?
I would
everyone-
challenge that.
I like to think that those people are just a walking lie as well, because here I am being like, well, really, because I like this.
'Cause I really love
That's the
It's
same thing.
social. Food
Yeah.
is so social.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the same thing as like abstaining from sex and saying you never have any sexual urges. That's not true.
Well, that's a
Is it
whole
the
nother
same?
thing. That's a whole nother.
So let's kind of wrap it up with, and this is kind of like, I don't know whether this is even an answerable question, but where do you see this journey taking you, like personally? And what do you think the future is of nutritional coaching?
I'll start with your second question first. I think there's all of this stuff is starting to kind of come to light, especially in light of quarantine and in light of the shitstorm that has been 2020 for most people in terms of like emotional eating and, kind of figuring all this stuff out. I think there's a lot around specificity to the client, meaning like just the stuff that we're talking about, like one specific diet maybe doesn't work for every single person in your client roster, and how can we sort of cater to the specific needs of each person, things that are a little more tailor-made to each person's specific needs. It was a little redundant, but I think that's sort of
I cannot impress you.
yeah. I think that's more hopefully where things are going. I do think we're starting to look at the psychology behind a lot of this stuff a little more now that we're being met with such crazy psychological ramifications of, again, this last
being
year.
slapped in the face with it.
Yeah. I feel really passionate about liberating people and women specifically from a lot of these sort of social constructs that we put on top of nutrition and the pressure that we as a society, put on people to like eat a certain way or look a certain way, or it's just, exhausting. And I'm like really, really passionate about educating people and kind of freeing people from all that stuff.
Okay, that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much, Bethany, for coming in. Now, obviously, the best way to work with Bethany right now is to join our Limitless Challenge starting on January
18th until February 28th. 6 weeks. Meet with Bethany weekly or check in with her every other week. It's going to be a really exciting deep dive into psychology, nutrition, fitness, wellness, and building resilient habits that last a lifetime.
Yeah, everything you need to hit 2021 running. It's gonna be fantastic. So, yeah, you can sign up via the app, or you can go to www.jointhepack.fit/limitless-challenge.
Boom! He's got it, people.
There you go.
Or you could just, click at the bottom of these show notes. Then you can get right there.
That will work. Okay, guys. Until next time, take care.